then I did New Girl, and that was the first time where I noticed that there had been a shift where people were like, well, she's actually good, and then she's actually a decent actress, and some people were like, she's never been a particularly funny actress, and I was like, fucking watch Jennifer's Body, you fuck me.
Shaped donuts. They are absolutely delicious.
Just to get one thing straight, this is bullshit.
This is probably the second weirdest movie I've ever made.
It was the most insane 3 minutes of film you can ever see.
Maybe that's where you thought there should be boobs.
We have sold more alcohol tonight than at any point in the history of the Arts Fest.
Well, Elijah's the only star I kind of know, so...
Thank you guys very much. Thank you Beyond Fest for programming like exclusively awesome stuff. I haven't seen a single thing here that I haven't liked, and this year has been a banger so far. And I'm gonna call tonight the crown jewel of the entire event. And you guys are the reason why for that. We are this community, the people who have always known, who sit in smug, self-righteous vindication, that we were always right about Jennifer's Body in 2009. Two sides to this story. And in my head, I've been billing this as Jennifer's Vengeance, because fuck yeah. And it was really important to me to bring this to Christian. These guys have always been so wonderful in interacting with them coming to this festival. This is my third or fourth year now. And they were so readily receptive, and the reason this movie, I think, is so special in the reclamation that it has had. It's special on its own, but the reclamation that it has had is unique. And that this movie just did not come out ahead of its time. It dealt with timeless issues, but it didn't just arrive too early to find its people. The reasons for its failures and for its poor reception at the time was largely because this movie and the star, the front of it, and the woman who wrote it, those two in particular, they held up a mirror to this industry and to the systemic way in which we handle and digest women we view as disposable, women we view as commodities. We did that in my industry. I am a journalist. And even though I've always known, I will take partial bad credit for that. I was always a real big Megan Fox fan, and it pissed me off at the time to read the way in which she was maligned for toxic and disgusting reasons. Wait a minute. There we go. And from a marketing perspective, in the way this movie was promoted in a way that undermined even its thesis and central positions, and then from the way it was handled by the chattering class once it arrived, who really showed their ass with their ingrained misogyny in how they evaluated it, not as a standalone work of art, but as an accumulation of personalities that they, I think, entered into a lot of the negative discourse with preconceived notions. Well, not today, and not tonight. Not here, not at Beyond. The People's Republic is here to officially put the exclamation point on the years-long process of giving Jennifer's Body its due. And this has been a warm-up round of applause, so when we have Karyn and Megan up on the stage later on, what I'm going to need from you all is to participate in my tent revival, which is why I pitched this goddamn thing in the first place. So we can honor these women and this art and ourselves, especially for you ladies and queers actors out there who've always been on the right side. So we'll take it back for them, and we'll take it back for us. And I can't wait to hear from you guys later on, and I cannot wait to hear from Megan and Colin on Jennifer's body.
We have nothing more to say. Let's shut this down. Thanks everyone for coming out. Jennifer's body.
All right, now's the moment we've all been waiting for, friends. Beyond Fest, please welcome, I'm gonna say them at the same time, director Karyn Kusama and star Megan Fox. Come on, come on, come on, come on! Come on! Woo! Well, it's crazy meeting like this. Sorry it took 10 years. I think we fixed it now. So thank you. And I guess I just wanted to start with that last scene, really. I was watching the wonderful conversation that you, Megan, had with Diablo Cody that was done on Entertainment Tonight, you guys speaking about the film. And you asked her what was like a favorite line she had written from the movie, and she had trouble pulling one that she was like, you know, I really am still attached to that end part where, you know, Needy runs Jennifer through, and obviously Jennifer responds, my tit, and Needy says, no, your heart. And she said that the reason she hung on to that because it's kind of the backbone of the whole film, like here you are looking at Jennifer's tits, and here I am trying to show you her heart. And I think that really gets at what was missed the first time this movie came out and what we've understood all along. So I wanted to start with saying thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
And I've spoken to you a couple times over the years, Karyn. I've never had the pleasure of speaking to you, Megan. But I wanted to know specifically for you, Megan, what was it that made you decide to start coming out and joining us in the sort of reappraisal tour of this? I know it's been a decade and that's a tiny time, but...
I didn't really understand how it had grown since, you know, we released it. I'm not like, my online presence is very minimal. I'm not online very much at all. And so I don't, you know, unless somebody takes me aside and says this is happening, I stay pretty much unaware of it. And so I didn't really understand how the movie continued to gain fans through the years. I have in recent years noticed a lot of Jennifer checks out at Halloween.
I've seen a couple here tonight.
But I wasn't aware until, you know, this year, all of a sudden there were all these requests for the 10-year anniversary and celebrating it, and I started looking into it a little bit more and really understanding the impact that it's had, and I just didn't realize that it was being appreciated now the way that it is.
Mm-hmm. And to both of you, you've been asked about this over the years when you've, you know, rolled out other films and people getting questions about Jennifer's body. But a unique part about the way this movie has been revisited is that it's not just, as I said in my introductory remarks, like it's not just, oh hey guys, this is good. The first piece I really remember coming out that sort of catalyzed this wave, which really started about 2 years ago, of let's talk about this some more, was a piece on the Mary Sue that was specifically titled, guys, so when are we going to apologize to Megan Fox? And then there was... only one person, and I've never underestimated you, but also I'm sorry. And then there was a feature that you and Tiago both participated in at the end of the last year that was, you probably owe Jennifer's body an apology. So I wanted to know that is a unique way to have your work revisited, and I wanted to hear sort of what your guys' personal reactions were to hearing it repackaged in that way.
I mean, for me, I'm gonna guess that I share this with Megan in that I like to make my work and then move on and not really revisit the experience necessarily for good or for bad, but just because I like to keep moving in my life. And for me, what's really gratifying about people coming back to the film and just watching it here with you guys today, it's being revisited because it's really fucking good. It's really fucking good! revisit it, and it's exciting to me. It's just cool. It's like, you know, of course the movie has its flaws, and a lot of movies do, most movies do, but I'm really excited by what survives in it, what remains like totally bracing and un-PC, and I have to say, while Megan is up here on stage with me, I mean, your performance is so layered, nuanced, complicated. I mean, it's like, I don't think people understood how hard it is to do that role, and you did it, and you made it look easy. And I just want everybody to acknowledge the performance.
I mean, it's canon. The performance is canon. And the thing about it is,
You are iconic.
and we mean it, not in that way that we say literally and don't mean it, and we say iconic and we need brunch. Like, we mean really iconic. An important, that is the reason, like, amidst the madness of this movie and the incredible hyperbole of, you know, Diablo Cody's beautiful style, verbally, there is you at the center who's obviously giving a really fun performance, just chewing through this dialogue, but at the same time, there's a through line of vulnerability that makes us never really be able to turn away from Jennifer. And as somebody who has really gunned for Jennifer checks in my own personal life forever, it rang so true to not be able to quit this person. And that was exactly something that I did want to talk to you about, was bringing that duality to the role. Because it's easy to just get lost in the absurdity, but fuck, you just anchored that so hard to earth. I cry at the end of that every time that BFF necklace comes off.
Wow. I don't know if that's, you know, I'm not going to sit up here and be like, you know, when I was studying method, I learned how to do it. That's not really what was going on. I think in general, I'm a much more vulnerable person than people realize and understand. And I'm very permeable, and I was at a place in my life and in my career and dealing with fame where I felt I was really struggling with that. And so I was sort of raw and very open, but also trying to constantly cover it by kind of adopting a Jennifer Check-esque kind of persona of my own in my own life, which was not, it was an affect. It wasn't really totally genuine. So I think it just happened, I happened to be the right person to play this character at that time, because I was kind of living a microcosm of it already, if that makes sense.
Oh no, it absolutely does. I think it's one of the great pieces of like software casting of ever. And no, it's not hyperbole, it's true. And Diablo, you asked Diablo in the conversation that you guys had in an interview, like why she picked you, and she said how, like, you know, a lot of people read for Needy, and then they obviously arrived at like the great choice of Amanda Seyfried, but she always knew that Jennifer was Megan, and you know, it worked out. And you had said that, you know, like the whole conversation happened, and by the end of it, you added on to that, and you said, I feel like I was the only person who really could have played this.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear you kind of expound on that a little bit more, because the very end of the interview, you didn't get to really elaborate much.
I think that it took someone who was like genuinely demented at that time to play a demon-possessed man-eating teenager. And I was just in a space in my life and mentally where I could fully embody that and be okay doing it. And it wasn't really an acting exercise per se. It was just leaning into the darkest part of my own shadow. And I was ready to do that at that time because I was already, like I said, struggling against so many other things in my career. And I was like, fuck it, let's just go deep into this place where I should be hiding all of this from people. Let's just expose it.
I mean, you were great at exposing from the jump. That was never anything you held back on, and that kind of candor was appreciated at the time. And rereading interviews and such now, I appreciate it even more than I was able to then. And with the dance of so much tone shift happening in this movie, you're the wrangler of this, you are the ringmaster. What was keeping you grounded when you knew, like, at the heart of it, it's like, all right, no matter how silly a scene gets or big it gets or vulnerable, what was the thing you go back to and be like, but this is the beating heart?
I mean, I think for me, it's interesting to rewatch the film after a long, long time and realize that I was always working with really good performances. And I think if the performances are honest, no matter what the tone, if there's a sense of sincerity that's not necessarily earnest, but like something real, in the performances. I think it's a lot easier to navigate a bunch of tones, and I was very lucky to have just so many people in the cast who just, from Amanda and Megan to Adam and Johnny.
Johnny's so good.
Johnny was amazing.
So great, and Kyle Gallner and Adam Brody. I mean, there are just so many wonderful performances, and J.K. Simmons. I mean, it's Amy Sedaris. It just kind of, for me, it goes on, and I feel like that's such a pleasure, and it was just a question. It is a lot of wrangling, but it felt, I don't know, somehow it felt more natural to me because there was so much honesty in the performances.
And I feel like, we'll talk more about sort of like the aftermath of the movie, but I feel like one thing I don't hear about much is like, what was it like to make the movie? Obviously, you were dealing with a lot in your personal and professional life around that era. You were coming off of Aeon Flux, Diablo's coming off of her Oscar and the sort of, creative persona being Diablo Cody. How was the set? How was just making the work?
What's your memory?
Feel free to chime in, anyone.
You're like, ooh. I feel like Amanda and I kind of fell into
The relationship.
Yeah, we kind of were that relationship off the set a little bit, not quite as toxic, but kind of that way a little bit. We were sort of living that a little bit, and
as a self-identified me, I 100% would have been like, oh, wow, I respond to this personality, sure.
I don't know. You probably have. What was it like for you? I was just in it, doing it,
right?
Living it.
I mean, Megan will remember I had my son up on set with me in Vancouver. He turned 1 while we were prepping. My husband was coming up every weekend. It was a lot of negotiating real life with the incredible privilege of getting to make a fantasy for a job. And so for me, it was actually a really exciting time, but it was a fun set. For the most part, it was a really fun set. I mean, the sacrifice scene, I remember being deeply upset by it. You were deeply upset by it. There were definitely things about it that were like disturbing at the time.
Sure.
But also, like, it's hard with dialogue that good not to have fun pretty much every day on set.
Can I ask a question?
Anything you want.
When we were making it, because for me, like, as an actor, you don't make a movie and you're like, this is going to be epic, or this is going to be around forever.
Right.
When you were making it, were you like, this is a fucking good movie, or did you not know until you got out of editing, where you were like, all right, we did it, we made a good movie?
That was one of my questions. Yeah, no, thank you. People want to hear more from you.
I mean, I always felt like it would have its trouble spots, it would have its areas that I can still look at and wish were better, but ultimately the movie works, and the movie worked in my opinion. I just didn't realize how, I think it's really provocative for people, like something about the way the movie was marketed and where you were in your career, where Diablo was in her career. It was kind of like we got this weird blowback before anyone had even seen the movie.
Oh, yeah,
it was really weird. So I always felt great about the movie, but I just, I try to kind of absorb failure, move on, forget about it,
A crazy thing about fandom is that we don't. So like, while you guys have like moved forward with Jennifer's body in your life, we've like yelled at each other on Twitter, alternately like defending your honor and like shouting at the people who agree, like, thank you. So we've just been on an infinite loop for 10 years. So good job to both of you for not. But you mentioned the sacrifice scene, and that is something that I've heard you speak on in interviews you've been giving for this lately, Megan. And there's a very evocative sort of way that you experience that, and the sort of multiple layers of bringing that victimization to the surface. And I was hoping you could share that with our audience here.
Yeah, so in talking about this, I did the Bloody Disgusting podcast, and having people ask me all these questions and having to reflect on it, I realized a lot of things, and one of the things was when I was doing that sacrifice scene, there are of course other things that I could pull from my childhood and past, but for me, that scene represented my relationship with the movie studios at the time and with studio executives and directors and just Hollywood in general, because I on almost a daily basis felt like I was being sacrificed for their gain, with almost no concern for my physical well-being. Fuck your mental or emotional well-being. That never is a question when you're a woman in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And whatever they need to do to me or put me through, they were going to do as long as it got them what they needed. And so in that moment, I think it was a very visceral, very powerful, almost cathartic experience, because I was able to let out everything that I was trying to keep in and not be vulnerable and be tough and fight it. I could just surrender to it and cry and wilt, and it was okay.
And Karyn, where, you know, obviously you recognize that that was a challenging scene to do in the moment, you know, working through it and being the person, you know, sort of shepherding it. How did you guys work through that, like that day?
Well, I mean, I think it's such a kind of meta scene. That scene, it's such a difficult. I find it really difficult to watch, actually.
Yeah, I have a hard time
My
getting
mom
through it.
still won't watch it.
Yeah.
She won't. She can't handle it. She knows what happens. She'll listen to it, but she won't watch it.
Oof, wow, just hearing you scream would be
Yeah.
enough, I think, for a mom. But I mean, I was just, you know, that scene. Megan and I agreed before we started shooting it that she was not going to ever wink to the audience, that we were playing this, like, no matter what was happening to her in terms of how other people were behaving, whether they were cracking jokes, the horror of it is that they are cracking jokes. And so I remember when it was over, first of all, it was exhausting. You were like quite literally on a giant rock in the middle of the woods.
In Canada in the winter.
In Canada in the winter at night. And it was close to the end, I believe, of our 3.5 weeks of night shooting. So we were all probably a little bit demented. But Megan just like gave so much. She made it so terrifying and deeply upsetting, deeply disturbing. And I remember after that day, what you had said that upset you so much about it when we were shooting it was how everyone just kept singing and laughing at you. And then to like hear the Kavanaugh hearings and hear Christine Blasey Ford say, all I can remember is all these guys just laughing at me.
Indelible in the hippocampus.
And I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about what it means for women to routinely feel like their humanity doesn't matter. And I really think Megan channeled an experience that ultimately is just too universal for a lot of women. And that was something really moving to me on that day, that there was something so viscerally honest about what Megan was doing.
Hell, that's a lot to like get through. I don't drink, and that makes me want to drink. Well, and I mean that like to tie it to current, and then like what you said in the New York Times shortly before the release of your show, exploring like archaeological controversies. You know, you said outright, I have my own stories and I don't share them because I'm not the sympathetic victim.
Yes.
I'm not what people want to see as the victim. That's
Yeah.
a fucked up weight to carry.
Yeah, and I'm working a lot on changing my own belief systems, right? Because that's what informs your reality. But for me, the experience I've had thus far in my life is that I felt if I had come forward during this sort of explosion of the Me Too movement with the stories that I have, and I have aplenty, that would be the one time it was okay to victim blame. And so I was sort of in that same prison of not being able to. It's a feminist movement, right? This is the time. It's okay to be a woman. It's okay. We're feminists. But am I accepted by the feminists? Because I never felt like I was. Like I was the one woman where it was okay to be a feminist and be like, yeah, but not her. She's stupid and she's selfish and she's a dumb cunt and we don't like her. and she, she deserves that because she said this or did this or. So it is a lot to carry, but again, it's my job to reframe that experience for myself and create a different reality. And so that's because it's easy to lean into it and be like, oh, I'm a victim, and here's why.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been my experience so far. I do feel like it's shifting in a good way, a positive way. But that was my relationship with the media and with the public and with men and with people at that time.
And I mean, I take personally the erasure of the female fandom that you always had, that was just so blatantly looked over at the time, and I feel we should touch on like the ugly conversation of the selling of this movie and the way in which the exploitation of your image at the time was used as a marketing hook in a way that totally undermined the spirit of the movie and its objectives. And like in the conversation you had with Diablo, where I think she mentioned like out of a focus group, like imagine friends watching this movie, like you're an executive and you're like, we need a focus group. I've just watched Jennifer's Body. Get me a room of men 18 to 24. They will glean insights from this that we need. And apparently among those insights, as Diablo said in this interview, one of them was needs more boobs. Boobs was spelled B-E-W-B-S.
And more was spelled M-O-A-R.
Yeah, more. And you had received, I think, your own. I think you'd received a message from somebody in marketing that was like caveman speak for like why this was going to be pushed away.
I mean, I guess I didn't deserve full sentences, but it was something along the lines of, because we looked at some first drafts essentially of the trailer, and the first trailers didn't have Amanda in it, and so we didn't understand that the movie had another character, and that it was so much about a friendship between Megan's character and Amanda's character.
Starring 30 versions of Megan Fox.
It was just so strange because it just took away the entire story, and it was just like So, I wrote a polite email, like, I'm extremely concerned by the absence of, I tried to be diplomatic, and what I got back was essentially like, Megan hot, focus on Megan hot, like, it was just such a strange, it was a dark time.
Right. And I think Diablo said in that conversation as well that when she wrote a similar email, like along being like, I'm convicted, this is why the movie should be presented in X way, and she got back, and you can just imagine like someone named Todd dashing off on their BlackBerry, Megan Fox hot. Yeah. Like, keenly observed Todd. Yeah. Thank you.
I hope that person's name wasn't Todd, but I don't actually.
Not all Todds, not all Todds. But it was the first thing it came about. So, well, it's something it's interesting to be asked to like come and play the greatest hits. Like you've obviously done a decade's worth of work in the intervening time. But I wanted to sort of ask you guys about what has this time been like sort of on the other side of ubiquity? Like, Jennifer's Body was such a buzzy film, and obviously Young Flux was a really big deal. Diablo, coming off of Juno and Oscar, and you being in the media fire tornado at the time as you were, you come off of this and you stay a professional, you stay a creative, you stay an artist. What was the process of realizing your work again after you kind of get your feet back under you from something like this? Obviously Jennifer's Body was not like the top of your list of concerns at the time with the way that seemed to have went down, but it seemed to be sort of the last step thing. You sort of seemed to fulfill your obligations that you had signed on to for that movie and then remeasure, work in your life. And we didn't see another feature film from you for 6 years. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to hear about what that sort of coming back through creativity and working again was after you go through something like that. Just a small question.
Something like that, meaning making a film that we thought was a great film and having it like almost universally panned and unappreciated.
Yeah, and specifically anchored to like the obvious like internalized misogyny that went into like, did you watch the same movie as me? Like reading roll reviews now, it's like, how the shit did you see this? Like, what is that? And so that's a specific way to have be kind of like betrayed by both the industry class and the chattering class when you put your heart and soul into something?
Well, we wrapped this movie, and then I went directly to film the second Transformers. And then, and then I probably did something else in the interim, and then what ended up happening weirdly is that, I don't know if this movie got caught up in editing or what happened, but Transformers ended up coming out the summer of 2009, and then this in the winter of 2009. And so we went through what we went through with the release of this. I anticipated it to a certain degree just because of what I was already going through. I never anticipated that people would watch it and be like, there would be like, you could run a trailer where it was like, Variety says, Megan Fox is stunning. Like, the performance of her life. I never anticipated that. I always thought that I was probably going to get shit on, but I thought it is a good movie, so I think it'll do, it should get some good reviews. It's still the thing I'm the most proud of this, and I did an arc on New Girl, which was my other favorite.
Oh yeah, Reagan.
So this came out. That happened while I was on the press tour for this. We landed in New York. We had been in Canada. Landed in New York. I was doing the VMAs with Adam, I think. And my publicist and agent come into the room, and they were like, we landed, and they were like, so there's a problem. We've gotten like 600 phone calls from Steven Spielberg.
Oh my God.
This was, if you don't remember, this was something we referred to as Hitlergate, where I had done an interview for a magazine, and I had said a whole bunch of stuff, but one of the things, I said a lot of it was really eloquent and good, but the one thing that everybody paid attention to was I referenced that, Michael can be very difficult sometimes on set, and sometimes he likes to take on the role of a dictator, and I thought it was a good colloquialism to refer to him as a Hitler.
Right.
That was not a good idea for many, many, many reasons. I was 23 or 22, I don't know.
Sure.
It's something I grew up hearing people say. It had no, obviously anti-Semitic slant or anything like that to it. However, he was very upset by that. He didn't like it. He was like, now anytime somebody Googles Michael Bay, it's going to say Hitler next to me.
Wrong.
So we were in a crisis when I landed, and I didn't realize the level of the crisis because I feel like I had already been in so many crises before that.
Right.
And I was supposed to start pre-production on the third of Transformers a few months after that. So essentially a lot of things happened. People demanded apologies. I refused to apologize. Blah, 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 blah. That doesn't make me cool. I was a stubborn kid. It would have been easier to just suck it up and go, look, I was wrong for sharing it publicly. If I have an issue, let's talk about it away from everyone. I didn't need to share that in a magazine article. I could have taken responsibility for that. I didn't want to because I felt I had been so wronged in all these other ways that I was going to stand my ground, be a Joan of Arc, and get on my horse. It's very self-righteous. So the movie comes out. It gets the reviews that it gets. It's kind of the problem that it was, the marketing issues. And then I go into pre-production for the third Transformers with someone who's not very happy for me to be in their movie.
Yeah.
And that didn't go well, as a lot of people probably know, because what ended up happening is, and there's much debate about this still currently, essentially we were never going to make that movie together.
Okay.
I happened to pull the trigger first and quit. I would have been, again, not because I'm cool, I would have gotten fired eventually. Anyway, I pulled the trigger first and was like, I can't live another 6 months like this. And I probably had, I think I had like a psychotic breakdown or a meltdown because I quit and Brian was like, it's like I saw a burden just come off of your body because now I saw you breathe for like the first time in 5 years.
Wow.
But I had to live through the persecution in the media for at least 2 years after that, where it wasn't just Mike, it wasn't just people at the studio who were planting stories on like Nikki Fink or whatever that website is that everybody cares about. Right. Because it's legitimate if you read it there. I had to live through that, and there were also like I was really getting it from other women a lot, and there was something, I forget which, she was a pretty legitimate journalist at the time, I forget who she was writing for, and she essentially said, I should have shut my mouth and been grateful because if it wasn't for Michael Bay, I would have been acting in porn movies.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm somebody's daughter, my parents are gonna read that, like what did I ever really do to deserve that? I never really
You were
understood.
never scandalous.
No, I never drank, I never did drugs, I never went to clubs, I've been in the same relationship for 15 years. I didn't understand really what it was, why I was why people project this onto me, why I'm such a mirror for people in that way sometimes. So that was my life immediately after the release of Jennifer's Body. And it was obviously very difficult, and that persisted for several years. I did Judd Apatow's movie where I actually two critics were like, hey, she was almost kind of funny.
Comedic timing.
She did okay.
You don't say.
And then I went on to do Ninja Turtles, and then I did New Girl, and that was the first time where I noticed that there had been a shift where people were like, wow, she's actually good, and that she's actually a decent actress. And some people were like, she's never been a particularly funny actress. And I was like, fucking watch Jennifer's Body, you fuck me. One thing I've ever been, it's a comedic actress. So that was sort of my life, and I went through it for years and felt very buried by it, and had a lot of anger and frustration. But I also became a mom, and I've had 3 kids since then, and that's really changed my perspective and my consciousness, and caused me to grow in ways that I can't describe, and where I'm able to just shift the way that I think and have a bird's eye view now, and not suffer over everything so much, But I don't know, it is tragic that it happened the way that it happened, but it also, it's kind of amazing to sit back and go, look at how far ahead of our time we were. We were 8 years ahead of everybody else with what we were doing and feeling and thinking and saying and speaking. So that part's cool.
So in summary, that was cool.
Yeah.
And Karyn, I feel like I don't know if this is just something that we toss around being snarky brats in media, or if is director's jail real? And did you feel like you were in it? Or were you just like, look, I'm focusing myself elsewhere besides features right now, man?
Director's jail is real.
Okay.
It's
Especially if you're
it's a lot.
Oh yeah.
I was just gonna say it's a lot more real. I think when you're female,
it's a real do not pass go, do not
sentences
collect
are
$200.
longer. But I would say that
straight to Guantanamo.
yeah. Yep. That's true. But I also I'm a very persistent kind of nose to the grindstone kind of person, and so I just kept working. I started really seriously working in television, and started returning to the indie space, and it took a while, but made the invitation and made my last film, Destroyer.
Destroyer's awesome.
So, I feel very, very lucky that I even get to make movies, because it's a hard thing to do. It's fewer and fewer people see them. I'm so thankful that you're all here on a Sunday afternoon to watch the movie on the big screen as it should be watched. So I am not saying this ironically. I'm truly grateful to be here.
Well, thank you for making the time for us.
You have a rejoinder?
I was just gonna say, I also think people have unrealistic expectations of creative output and how often you should be doing something.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of questions you get all the time, but when I get a lot of questions, I talked about this with Diablo. Whenever I'll be on a press tour for a movie, and the journalist will be like, you're not working a lot. And I'll be like, okay, well, I made this movie. How many movies do you want me to make? And it's always tied back to the Transformers debacle. I was put in jail, right? I wasn't allowed to be an actor anymore because of what happened in Transformers. And I was like, but I went on to open and star in 2 movies that opened worldwide. I did an arc on New Girl that was critically acclaimed. I executive produced, created, and starred in a show about archaeological controversies.
Yeah.
And I've had 3 kids.
3 whole babies.
So they came out of my vagina.
Yes.
And what do you expect? When is it good enough for you? When is it okay for a person to also just live and learn and grow and work when they feel inspired to work? Why do you have to immediately peg them as like, oh no, they're in jail, or they're a loser, or they can't get work, or they're not wanted, or why Megan Fox can't make movies anymore, or whatever that weird shit is you see online sometimes. What is why are people so judgmental about creative people? Sometimes writers go years without being able to write, or painters aren't always painting. I mean, you have to be ready to do it. I think we should give people a break and time to breathe and learn and know who they are before they move forward with different projects.
Well, and also you're lighting over like being a mom is a job, and also like you can just walk back onto set and everyone's going to be totally accommodating of those 3 children you have and how you have to organize your life around
Well,
that.
you can't work while you're pregnant if you're an actor. I mean, you can maybe for the first couple of months, but once you're showing, it's like being a leper. They have no interest in you being on set anymore. And then you have a baby, and I always went back to work like 4 or 5 weeks after, which I would never do again. But even that wasn't good enough, right? It's like, well, you haven't worked in a year. Well, I've had a person growing inside of my body.
Yeah, who else did that?
And you won't let me work on camera because I have a person inside of my body. So it's a lot of judgment, I think, being a woman in general. And that bit I haven't really seen shift too much. The part about like transitioning into being a mom and being an actor in Hollywood. Hopefully that will continue to change and there'll be a shift there. But anyway, I don't know if you might get annoyed at those questions because I get them all the time too, and it's like, let me be a human, let me be a person who lives a life and then also does creative things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will turn it to the audience for a couple of questions that we have time for. So, what do you got? I will repeat the question back out so everybody can hear it. Go for it.
Okay, so I'm 19, so I didn't watch this movie when it first came out.
You would have been 9, we forgive you.
But when I first watched it, afterwards, I went to read some of the reviews, and I was so shocked because when I was 9, apparently it was okay for professional reviewers to go, if you want to look at Megan Fox's body, there are better ways to do it. And it goes back to did you just watch the same movie as me?
Mm-hmm.
Because, there's so few things in Hollywood that are just strong women that's actually made by women. So I guess it's not really a question as much as
Well, she talked about how obviously revisiting the reviews is an abhorrent display of misogyny and sexism. So if you guys have any thoughts additionally you wanted to share with our phase, I'd say second wave Jennifer's Body fandom there.
I hope that what the film is exploring is how misogyny and the power constructs of what we call the patriarchy, they warp everyone. It's not just men become damaged in that system. Women become so damaged in that system. And I think what hurt, if anything hurt, about the process of releasing Jennifer's Body, it was the rejection by female critics who seemed to just sort of dismiss the movie and really just get on a train of humiliation, speak, and just felt a power in belittling the film and the filmmaking. And that's a critic's prerogative, but I found it to be a really fascinating reflection of what the movie was actually about.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Do we? Oh, yes, sir.
I just have a question about the music in the movie. It's a very time capsule of what was popular back then. So what was the process of going getting even the guys in the movie getting them all emoed up and everything?
The question was about bringing together the sonic identity of the movie and putting the music together.
The music was a huge thing. I had a great music supervisor named Randy Poster who I continue to work with, and he and I really put together, I think, a very almost kind of like a crazy pastiche of a lot of different kinds of music from the era that were still influencing each other in some ways. So it was really fun to put the music together. It's practically wall to wall.
I love that, like, for the first few cues, whenever, like, Monster Jennifer shows up, it's just metal! Like, you walking across that field and just hearing thrashing metal, I was just like, I feel power! And somebody said, like, after, one of my favorite reactions on Twitter to when Wonder Woman came out was somebody was like, holy shit, I want to go and, like, dominate an entire country. Is this how men feel all the time when they walk out of movies? Jennifer's body is our war epic, everybody. And how about you, right there?
So I watched this movie when I was 14, and it was kind of like the first time that I was like, oh shit, I think I'm gay.
This movie is their root. I don't want to misidentify she, her, they, them.
It all works.
Okay, it all works.
So I just want to ask, like, do you think this is also like a movie about like sexuality and like sexual exploration?
Asking about how much of the movie is about sexuality and sexual exploration. And queerness.
It was so crucial that the reveal was that actually Needy and Jennifer have a sometimes intimate relationship, and that is part of why it's so emotionally entangled. It's not just BFFs, it's kind of more complex than that. And I felt like I got a lot of blowback for embracing the eroticism of that relationship, but for me, that was part of the film's identity, you know, that, and I've always embraced the idea of queerness, and I just feel like their relationship was not made more titillating for a young male audience. It was made more interesting for everyone and for the actors playing those characters, because they had a somewhat secret but deeply close relationship.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, as somebody who identifies as pan-romantic gray asexual, Google away, I spent my life kind of marching up to that boundary of having really intimate friendships that skirt the limits of what heteronormative constructs allow us to consider as intimate without verging into romantic relationships. So that tension coming through in that scene felt so identifiable to me, and the many layers to that. And I mean, how was that to shoot for you? Like, how was that day on set? It's obviously like a uniquely close Zoom.
Yeah, I did mention that just the logistics of that, like being a young female and having chin acne was very stressful because how close that shot was going to be. But I think for me at least, I knew that the scene was not going to be taken for what it was intended to be going into shooting it, and so the pressure and almost sort of the already I was anticipated disappointment of realizing, and I think I said this on the press tour or before, that the entire trailer was probably going to be just that scene of me making out with Amanda. And every sort of, it would be clickbait of like Megan Fox's first lesbian scene. And so I think it made it hard to experience it the way I would have wanted to, because I was so preoccupied with what is this really going to be turned into, which of course it was, and it was completely misunderstood. And I don't know if in the test screenings were the bros like, yeah, when that was happening, like broing out.
The irony is that I think the scene is both erotic and really scary, because at this point we see Jennifer's power, and so we're not sure where this is exactly going. And I think
maybe that's where he thought there should be more boobs.
I think it really, it fully cements that where the love story exists in this movie, and it also, one of the sort of critiques I read of it was like, there's no context for this. It's like, the minute you see Needy see Jennifer in the gym, there's context.
Yes, yeah.
What? Yeah. Look, I'm sorry if that's ever been your life, ma'am, but whoa, erasure. But I think that brings us to the end of our time, but because I have a microphone, I'm going to take a second to just reiterate that the reason that I wanted to do this was because I wanted you guys to have a very celebratory forum to feel seen and to feel heard, and for you to see us enjoying this work you made so much. And at the time then, The way you comported yourself in interviews and the way you spoke candidly and so self-actualized meant a lot to me. We're about the same age, you're younger. And I admired you, and I respected how fucking forthright you were. And you check so many boxes now for what we say we want. And our model, public image, heroine. You took no shit, you called out things that happened to you. All those things, now we celebrate on Twitter with a variety of we love to see it, and we have no choice but to stand. But at the time, you got shit on for it. And that really sucked. And you weathered it so well, and all three of you, coming out at the end of this. Obviously, there was more going in your lives at that moment and now and ever than Jennifer's body. But none of you softened your edges coming out of this. We have Destroyer and The Invitation from you.
I'm still pretty edgy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah! And Diablo, took a minute and then gave us Tully and Young Adult. Difficult, shitty, upsetting people dealing with what life is really like for a lot of women in a lot of ways that people don't like to talk about. And then you continued on, Megan. You are a mom, and you are an actress, and you are a creator, and you are a producer. And you never relented on being yourself, and none of you seemed to. And it was inspiring then, and it's inspiring now. So, what I need from you all is exactly what I've been asking for on Twitter, and what I asked for at the start of this night. I would hate to be for the last thing said here is me, however. I need you guys to thank Megan and Karyn right now, in a way and to a degree, that I want Diablo Cody to hear it, wherever the hell she is right now. I want this to ring in the ears of critics who watch this in bad faith and wonder, what was that? As the cosmos shake around them. So please get on your damn feet and thank Megan Fox and Karyn Kusama for Jennifer